Hello. That's right, it's Sunday night again. This is Bite Size Learning. I am your host, Dr. Mike Sevilla. And tonight we have another great topic. If you're looking to see what we've talked about before on Bite Size Learning, you just go to the OAFP website, ohioafp.org. And you can click on our little tab there and see all the fun stuff that has to do with Bite Size Learning. So tonight we're going to be, we have two panelists, very exciting. We're going to be talking about the AAFP Foundation Family Medicine Leads Emerging Leader Institute Scholars Program. I know that's a mouthful, but it's very cool. And just a brief description of this signature education program of the AAFP Foundation focuses on the future of family medicine specialty by supporting efforts to fill the workforce pipeline with the best and the brightest, as well as developing more and better trained family medicine leaders through attendance of the AAFP National Conference of Family Medicine Residents and Medical Students, which is just, I believe, in 2 weeks at the end of this month, and participation in the Family Medicine Leads Emerging Leader Institute. 30 medical students and residents are selected annually as scholars, and we have two of them here this evening. Why don't we bring them up now? So we have Jamie Pandey, a third-year medical student, and Michaela Ward, a second-year medical student, both from the best medical school on the planet, the Northeast Medical University. And welcome, panelists.
Thank you.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yes, I'm very excited to talk about your projects coming up soon. But first, I have to tell people so Jamie isn't actually local, so just so we can get all our jealousy on. So Jamie, share where you're at and what you're doing there.
Well, I happen to be in Parma, Italy. My sister's getting married, so I am very fortunate to be able to come help her prepare and, well, help her eat some really good pasta and pizza.
Wow, that is so cool, and it is after midnight after we record this there, so
Yes.
we're so jealous. So that's a whole nother program that we'll bring you
Yes,
on
next time.
the Italy show. So Neomed has been very talented in that we've had scholars in the past. So why don't you, the both of you, kind of talk about the LEADS program, the Emerging Leader program, kind of how you got started in that process, and then we'll eventually get to your topics. So Michaela, why don't you go first, and then Jamie can follow after that.
Sure. So I'm starting my M3 year. So I was the main COVID class, I guess I could say. I started at Neomed in July of 2020. We faced a lot of new changes. My class had a new curriculum, new COVID changes, and I came from out of state. I'm from Indiana. So a whole new environment to me and a lot of change to go through. But I knew going into medical school that family medicine was a really big interest for me. And so I kind of threw myself into the department at Neomed, found some really great mentors, one particularly in Mike Appleman. And throughout the year, with my involvement with Jamie here as my other mentor through Family Medicine Interest Group, near the spring semester of my M1 year, he said, hey, this program seems like a really good fit. It might be difficult to get in applying as an M1 student, but Neomed has a good reputation for this. I really think that you should go for it. Don't get too discouraged if you're not selected. You're up against residents, but this will be a good thing for you to try for. And a few months later, Jamie and me both found out we got into the program. It was really exciting. I started following in her footsteps as our family medicine interest group president at Neomed, and it's honestly just such a cute story, I think, too, that we both got to do this program together. And now we're both in the clinical world, kind of wrapping up our main studies at Neomed and get to apply what we've both been learning for a while. So I've never really done a longitudinal program like this. In undergrad, I had some summer projects, and ran into some time struggles. I was an athlete in college, so being able to really set aside the time to do a longitudinal project of my choice was really freeing. And I'm really glad I got to have this opportunity, especially with the AAFP, which has been hands down the most supportive organization that I've kind of been involved with. Of course, with the OAFP, I consider them kind of just like my two like rocks with getting through medical school. I've never felt like such love for like an organization before, but I really felt like I belonged in a time where I really needed that, coming from all those changes, like I mentioned. So yeah, this was just kind of a culmination of all of that, feeling like I belonged, and them seeing that as an M1 student, for the first time, getting some national kind of exposure. So it makes me feel really, really excited, and at home in the family medicine community. So I'll stop talking. I'll let Jamie kind of tell you about her perspective on it.
Great, thanks.
No, that was really well said. A lot of the same things. I'm very lucky that I've had a similar experience. A lot with our family medicine and community department. It's really strong at Neomed. Mike Appleman also was one of my mentors and helped me. He was the friend of family medicine last year, I believe. So really exciting that we get to work with such mentors and people who help us. So he also helps me with the rural medicine pathway as well. So I have a lot of family medicine mentors there as well. And it was through that pathway, actually, by word of mouth from other ELI scholars that, they said, this would be a good next step for you. You'd learn a lot. You'd become a better leader. You'd learn more about family medicine as how you would practice it later on from kind of an administrative aspect, because this longitudinal project doesn't have to just be a one-time thing. This can be something that can continue on, something that's important to you. So I looked at it from the perspective of, I'm very passionate about motivational interviewing, especially how it deals with medical student education and addiction medicine, and getting students to get exposure to that as soon as possible, because I think it's such a great foundation. So that's kind of where I was coming from. I had an idea in mind, and I also had my two mentors, Varun and Jake. They were also in the ELI Scholars Program, and they told me, hey, really apply for this. So that's my story.
Cool. I guess from a logistics standpoint, because there's going to be some people, especially students watching this, going to national conference in a couple of weeks. So what are the logistics of that? Do you have to apply to be in this program, or how does that all work?
Yeah, there's a process that you can go onto their website. If you just search Emerging Leaders Institute application, it'll pop up right away. And it's just, you do a couple essays, and you have to have, I believe, is this the one where you have the either a recommendation letter from the department, right? Okay. So we had Dr. Boltree, he wrote a recommendation for us. So that was, it doesn't hurt to have like such a strong department to help us along the way. And it's very it's really encouraging to know that, your department stands behind you, especially as you're looking forward to future leadership opportunities. So that was a pretty exciting process, even though it was an application process and thus nerve-wracking. So, Michaela, you can answer what your experience was like.
Yeah, I mean, the application process is never like the most fun thing you'll do in your day, but I will say we did have to write, I think it was around 4 different essays. And I will say some of those can be really arduous and really kind of questions that make me think, why are they asking me that? But I knew that I would have a good time with this program based on what they asked and what they wanted to hear from me. I can't remember what they were now, but the impression it gave on me is that they really wanted to know what I cared about. They really wanted to figure out who in this application pool could really grow from this, where your passions lie and where those passions were rooted. At the time, again, I had a lot of uncertainty. I was in a new place, all of these things, but family medicine was the only thing kind of keeping me grounded. And in other things in the past, I felt that the organizations I was involved in maybe didn't exactly see what I wanted out of it, see where my passions lied. And the fact that they selected me for this made me feel like I finally found my place. Like I get them, they get me. And it was really, just based on the whole application process, selection process, I really felt like I belonged and they were asking the right questions to get, a good group from across the country, from all different backgrounds to really benefit from this experience.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I also want to give a shout out to the Rural Pathway Program. I'm part of that, and Mike Appleman, he's the man, so I want to give him a shout out too. So, so why don't we just dive into things? Michaela, when we talk about your project first, we can see if we can get your slides up here. That's always the next challenge. Let's see here.
All right, well, I guess while I'm working on that, I don't have a bunch to show. Let's see. There we are. That should help. Okay.
There it is.
This is just, I don't want anyone that may be watching this to be overwhelmed by this. I just kind of wanted to give a representation of kind of what I deliver to the AAFP as a summary. Essentially, this is called the Case-Based Preventive Medicine Workshop. And where this kind of was rooted was that during my M1 year, we talked a lot about prevention and how you would apply that to the clinical world in certain subjects along the way. Let's say we were in cardio, we could prevent XYZ, and then, there's this cool website that you can use, and then we moved on. And it kind of, I thought that was kind of a missed opportunity. I thought we could really learn a lot about how these are applied in the clinical world if we are using the same tools that we will be as future physicians. And one of those was the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, USPSTF. I'll try to not say that more than a few times because it is a mouthful. I think I mess it up every time. So just try to remember the task force. I'll just say the task force.
No, I always mess that up too, so.
Yeah, but anyway, I really enjoyed seeing what those prevention methods, and it was really cool playing around with what kind of recommendations are being used in practice. And as an M1 student, when everything overwhelms you, it was a really good source to look at what the world of prevention looks like in real life. So I really liked that resource, and I took that into combining it with the American Family Physicians Journal. And again, with my love for the AAFP, they had the perfect resources I was looking for this project. I wanted some vetted cases that you could apply to how could you help this patient in this case, help them with your prevention goals, and how could you work through those as a case-based session, because we know that's all the rage in medical education these days, and I wanted to apply that too. NeoMed is on top of that in our curriculum, so I thought, why don't we combine these in a session, student-led, go through these cases together, see what we can come up with, try to help these patients, see what little nuggets of knowledge or things we could say, things we could learn about that are relevant to the disease we're learning about in class. So this workshop, I brought together as many interest groups as I could. Now, this was a tough year for engagement for many reasons, COVID included. So this ended up being a very small pilot, but it showed me a lot about what students are interested in, what students are willing to dedicate time for, and what you can put into it, what you can get out of it. But essentially, the 4 groups that graciously helped me run this workshop was the family medicine interest group, of course, that was a given, the obstetrics and gynecology group, dermatology group, and the nephrology and endocrinology group. And I had planned out, give them the student guide, kind of giving them an overrun of how this workshop could work with students, assign them a topic of prevention from the USPS, task force, and had them work through some cases, figure out some ways where we can practice some motivational interviewing, which is why I love that me and Jamie did this together, because she kind of brought on the more advanced, how could we practice more of these motivational interview techniques. I wanted to introduce these concepts and how you could apply them at the end of your office visit. or when you're at limited time. So I focus more on the very small 5-minute interventions, just like I go into like the 5 A's for tobacco cessation. But essentially this project was just gearing towards seeing a gap in applying some prevention knowledge using the tools that we have available to us and introducing those ideas to preclinical medical students to make sure that prevention is in the back of their minds and making sure they're comfortable practicing those conversations with patients, because through a lot of this research, we know it can go a long way, especially at the end of an office visit. So yeah, I'll kind of leave it there for now. I guess if you have any other specific questions about maybe logistics, how this went.
So the cases were focused on what the student group was about, like a dermatology was like a skin cancer type of thing, or did they all get all the cases for everything?
Yeah, so each group, how I split it up was based on the task force splits up recommendations by, there's a screening recommendations for various recommendations. There's interventions and counseling, and also medication. So I guess I could advance here. So again, don't be overwhelmed, but this is just how I presented it to the students. This was kind of a test of how could I apply every interest group. If this were to be a very large NeoMed event, how could every interest group related to a specialty on campus get involved in prevention? That was another key goal for me, is I wanted to figure out how we can engage all students. The only reason that didn't happen was interest from student leaders, which again, I think could provide a lot of lessons learned about how we can make this more engaging, how we could draw more students. Was the food not good enough? That kind of thing. We've learned a lot that food really brings people. So a lot to learn there, but I still really love this idea. And I just know that I love this idea. Somebody will want to spend an hour of their time to maybe just like this idea. But anyway, this was how I planned out assigning different topics related to each specialty.
Oh, I think I got it. So each of the topics, you've broken them down similar to how the task force breaks down their recommendations. Is that right?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yes. So the obstetrics gynecology interest group, for example, there was a task force recommendation on healthy weight gain in pregnancy, and that had to do with what are some behavioral counseling interventions. There were also some medication interventions, which I was really hoping to get some pharmacy groups involved, because NeoMed is really blessed to have the medical school and the pharmacy school. But again, that's something I think could be more expanded past a pilot workshop. So I just tried to apply these to what could pique your interest if you were involved in these specialties. And again, a good way to bring in as many students as possible, no matter if they were interested in primary care or not. That was another main goal, is I didn't want prevention to only mean primary care providers, because I know that's kind of what I thought at first. You go to your primary care provider to take care of all those prevention needs, and then you go to your specialist for everything else. And I thought it didn't quite have to be like that. It doesn't have to be such a time-intensive process. Any physician, any healthcare worker that you go to should be able to discuss some ways that you can keep healthy before other interventions down the road. Some more than other. Again, I struggled with a little bit with radiology interest group, but there was some breast cancer screening that they could learn about, just like with mammography, in a way to learn about those different topics that will become relevant to them in the future. So anyway,
that's a great,
sorry, go ahead.
Excuse me, that's a great kind of big concept thing to kind of learn, even from a project like this, is that prevention can be, applies to anybody, applies to any specialty. That's a great point.
Yeah, and so this is just another, again, showing you what the students, the leaders that were planning their 10 to 15 minute workshops of the hour, they had the task force recommendation, and also the case studies from the AAFP, and using those to integrate it into a workshop. And this I just wanted to show a picture of I really wanted to get some actual group work, not just lecture style. So actual practice with a technique for tobacco cessation. That was the family medicine interest group's topic. And that was just the 5 A's. So had some ideas for how you would talk to a patient. They simulated patient-physician conversations over the course of 10 minutes. And they all seemed to really enjoy it. And we all know that even though you hear the 5 A's, oh, sure, I got it, I'll remember that, it won't really hit home until you're actually talking with a partner. In a non-threatening way, you're not graded. That was another, I guess, goal of mine as this was student run. And again, this is just to show kind of how these workshops were presented. I gave them a guide on how to put together their short presentations before it was practice time, either working with the cases or practicing with each other. So like a standard workshop style, talking about the recommendation, talking about why this is important. Again, providing the methods for assessment and interventions, kind of giving them the ammo needed to talk to a patient about it in practice, demonstrating it and practicing with each other. And you can do this with the screening, the intervention, and the medication topics from the task force. So.
Cool, great. Thank you for that. So you kind of alluded a little bit in your talk there. Are there things that you kind of learned along the way as far as process or as far as interacting with other student groups?
Yes, so it was, I anticipated it being really difficult to, anytime you're kind of going beyond your interest for your group. For example, at NeoMed, we're notorious for having a lot of different interest groups, which is great, but everyone is really trying to make the most of their time as a leader of an interest group. And that's when time can be short. So partnering with other interest groups to under their umbrella to make a workshop can really stretch some time. But I was really grateful for my classmates that was able to help me kind of make an event to gather more people, kind of unite as one, I guess, because a lot of us struggle to get attendance if you're having like a really niche topic. So I got, what better way to attract as many people as possible to learn about this for an evening than to partner with other students. Part of it too, I think the timing of the year, it was in March, things were getting really busy, things were wrapping up for the year. So I think ahead of time, now that we've, seen how this has played out, I think just the time could be, adjusted, maybe not during when everyone's trying to get out of here for the summer. But yeah, those are all future things. And I hope that I can work with the current leaders at FMIG at NeoMed to see if this can be adaptive to some way. And hopefully we can work on prevention a little bit more than it's touched in the M1 and M2 years. So
Great. Well, thank you, Michaela.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll bring Jamie back, and we can see if we can bring your slides up here for your project here. Oh my gosh!
Oh, hey, there.
There you go. It's magic.
Yeah, it is. I appreciate the magic. I did not make the magic happen. Let's be clear here.
There you go.
Well, yeah. So my project, in a similar way as Michaela's, is getting that practice in. Is I thought, first day of interviewing for patients where we had practice patients, it was very awkward. I did not feel like I knew exactly what I was doing. And of course, with any practice, the first time is always going to be very awkward. But there were things that really helped me. I had some motivational interviewing classes in the past, and I thought, hey, why not think of it as, this is what the patient's saying, and I should be listening very carefully to it. And I already know some tools. So I felt like the very first time, at least I had some guidance. And I thought, why not bring that to medical students? Because at least they have a tool to begin with. And then they also are starting from a patient-centered approach. So with that in mind, I kind of thought, wow, why not create more practice sessions for medical students? And maybe by being more patient-centered and using active listening, that we could maybe even build more empathetic future physicians from this. So that was the idea, and this is my project. And first off, I just wanted to thank a lot of people, my mentors. As you can all see, there's a lot of people who helped. This was not a one-person job. Fortunately, I had a lot of really good support, and rural medicine, just FMEG, everyone here, they were great. Just a little outline. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Emerging Leaders Institute kind of taught us and how they helped us structure our projects, as well as what my project was and outcomes, as well as what I learned from a leadership aspect. So we started off because mine was a philanthropic and mission statement, mission-driven leadership program, because we had 3 different tracks within the ELI. So we started off and they said, make your mission statement. And to me, that was very difficult because you have to think, what do you want to achieve in your career? So that's in your life in general. So I tried to go broad, and then I had to come a little bit more specific. And I thought, well, here's what I came up with. And the idea is just, I know that through medicine, especially family medicine, I wanted to make sure that my impact makes my community better. So just a quick summary of that. And the other inspiration for this project came from the 3 questions from Dr. Borghese, as introduced by Dr. Zirconi for NeoMed. He mentioned these questions helped guide this person in his projects. He said, where am I going? Why am I going there? And when I get there, will it be what I sought when I set out for it? And that 3rd question is kind of difficult. And I keep thinking about it and how it helps impact my project as I go along. I kind of think, well, I have these ideas of what I think I'll get, what my projects will be, and will it be what I expected? So that's something I think is my future question. Is my project began with what do I want to achieve and why? And then as I go along, I want to think, am I achieving that? And is it what I expected? So it's kind of a development in process. So another thing, my background with motivational interviewing and rural medicine. First off, Dr. Spalding, she's wonderful. She told me, seek first to understand and then to be understood. And I thought, what a wonderful and patient-centered approach to anything, really, because if you're going to come into a conversation with a patient, at least you should understand where they're coming from. Otherwise, you're going to make for a lot of complications and maybe frustrating moments. Another thing that was really impactful for me was Dr. Heinzelman said, when I was talking about, I have a lot of things on my plate and I'm not really sure where to begin. And, when I meet patients, there's so much and I feel overwhelmed. And he said, I had to ask myself, is this my problem to fix? And what a wonderful clarifying moment that was. And I thought, well, maybe we need to be thinking from the patient's perspective. What are they responsible for fixing and what are we responsible for? So all of these came together, and I wanted this project to basically create something that would give students tools, would help them become more patient-centered, trying to understand, like Dr. Spalding taught me, and making it that sort of patient interview one that you are guiding, not being directing or not following the patient, because that sometimes can lead you down many paths that aren't helpful for them. And the other thing is like Michaela's project, I wanted to increase that application of learning, because you can hear it in the classroom all you want, but unless you're actually applying it, it does no one any good. So the other part of this project was, this was supposed to reinforce the purpose of becoming a healer. You were there for the patient and you were there to help the patient. So why not make it a more patient-centered approach? I thought motivational interviewing was a great way of starting with that. I did a literature review. Long story short, they said practice, repeated practice, and making sure that you're using standardized patients or student colleagues. Either one were just as effective. So I used both in my project. And I went and collected data as I went along. And they also said that making sure that it's a longer process, not just one-time exposure to motivational interviewing, was the most effective. So what was my actual project? I created workshops where we would go on Zoom and we would have a short, like 10 to 20 minutes max of teaching, of showing what is motivational interviewing and using one bit of a skill. And then from there, the rest of the hour was practice. We paired off students and we had a facilitator in each of the breakout rooms, and we had them practice, once from a patient perspective and once from a physician perspective. These were not made up situations usually. These were just something not very personal that the student was going through, that they were thinking, I have a change and I'm thinking about what I would do, but I haven't really gotten there. And the other student was there to play the part of the physician and to help them, using motivational interviewing, kind of consider that change. What were they thinking? And to do so in a non-judgmental way. Being able to actually say what you want without being judgmental and just helping reflect and making sure that the patient is at the center of each of your sentences is difficult. So actually applying that was very helpful. And I wanted those workshops to be mostly application. We also had a standardized patient session. So we worked with the Wasson Center, which is a kind of a patient, standardized patients come there and the students come in and they are able to practice. And they use a standardized form to evaluate the patient or the student on this from the patient's perspective. So they say, you did this well, and here's our standardized form to show you how you're doing. We also continued this project from this 2021 to 2022 years. Wow, so this is a 2-year project. And then we expanded it for the AHEC scholars. And this is the Area Health Education Centers. Acronyms always get me, just like Michaela, I understand. But this is where underrepresented or underserved areas, those students who are in undergrad who want to serve in those areas, they can be a part of this program and they get mentorship and or get more of a STEM background in order to basically help areas that are underserved. So we worked with those undergrad students and did a very similar workshop with them. And then we're working on creating these lessons that are for our student-run free clinic, so that each of our volunteers at the free clinic will have an idea of what is motivational interviewing, how can I apply it, and how does it help the patient, and how does it help me become a better physician. So what were the outcomes? We had over 40 students participate in these workshops over the last 2 years. We used surveys to evaluate how they were processing the content. How comfortable were they with using it after the session? Because application should help you feel more comfortable with the topic. And we also wanted to know how we could improve. How could we deliver the content better and help them learn it? So we had 14 students actually fill out the surveys. It's very difficult to get people to fill out surveys, I've learned. And I've also learned some of my mistakes along the way of how could I improve survey feedback. But as for the results, the blue being the before for each student and the green being after the workshop for each student, you can see a steady progression of each student becoming more and more comfortable with motivational interviewing after attending a workshop. And then here we have the standardized patient evaluation, that standardized form that they filled out to show how did each student do. Well, each color represents one student, and it's kind of a lot of data compacted, but I wanted to be able to get all of this information as possible into one table, just kind of showing what each student did well. And each of these students who attended the standardized patient session had attended several workshops before doing the standardized patient evaluation. So you can see that there's pretty high ratings across the board of motivational interviewing skills, what they did well and what they avoided that is to be avoided in motivational interviewing, as directive behavior that is judgmental was mostly avoided across the board. So overall, the workshop seemed to be pretty helpful, and the students had some positive feedback to give to us, and they also had some, suggestions going forward. So for the future directions, we're going to include more pharmacy students. We had some throughout the year, and this was open to anyone at Neomed, including any graduate program, medical, pharmacy, anatomy, anything. We want to continue with the AHEC scholars. We want to get that teaching courses up and running for the student-run free clinic. And we also want to continue those workshops because this is a part of family medicine, is being able to work with people who are going through changes and making sure that we're not being judgmental and working on helping them make the changes that they really want to see in their lives. So, and we're also going to have those teaching sessions be available and help the next class of students become the teachers. Because I don't think leadership should be confined to one person. You got to draw on your network. Lastly, we're really worked on a lot of leadership within the Emerging Leaders Institute, and which makes sense, it's in the name. So what I learned was not only about how to develop a mission statement, as well as my project, making sure to do so by focusing, learning what I value, and making sure I can define it well. Dr. Kim Yu, she told us a lot of amazing things about how she had gone and gotten generators during a hurricane and the mess it made of the primary care clinics. And she got generators to be able to help them. And she said she knew nothing about generators to begin with, but she said, you can learn anything. And that's what she wanted us to walk away with. And here I am walking away with that lesson. So, so I figured, I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to try to do something I'm uncomfortable with, which is creating these video recorded lessons for the free clinic, because technology is not my forte. You may not be able to tell because OAFP has been helping me a lot with that. But the other thing is that I want to be able to share what I've learned. I don't want it to just end with me. So some of that involves engaging stakeholders. Who has something to say and gain from this project? So I've been trying to not only get the free clinic involved, the AHEC Scholars Program, but also other students, because I feel like they do have interests in the motivational interviewing and teaching and leading. So, I've been trying to grab as many as possible of M1s or M4s to be involved. And that's a part of developing the team. And the other thing is asking for help when you need it. I'm kind of a workhorse sort of minded person. I like to get that project going and continue and get it done. But I shouldn't just think from my perspective. Developing that team, finding your network, that's a wonderful way of developing yourself, your own leadership skills, as well as making sure that your project actually reaches as many people as possible. So that's another thing I learned. And finally, they also helped us a lot with communication and how to run a meeting, because that's a difficult thing to do, especially since we've been doing a lot of that online, and they gave us some tips and tricks for that as well. And so finally, I was at those last three questions. What do I hope to be? And I kept asking myself that, and I wanted my project to be something I was passionate about, something that I thought, well, I want to be an empathetic and patient-centered physician. So what do I hope to achieve? Well, I don't want to be the only one who is doing this, and I haven't been, but I wanted to help others find an easier path towards listening to the patient and becoming someone who's really valuing what the other person in the room values, the patient. And so how do I hope it'll be when I get there? Well, that's something I'm still defining. So this is something I have in the back of my mind, is like, what do I hope to see in the future, and how can I help make it that? So that's my project, and I have a questions and references slide if anyone is interested. AAPA.
Well, thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that. In the last study of your slide, you kind of shared some of your takeaways and kind of your learning process. So that's always interesting, having people reflect on, at the end of the process or at the end of the project, kind of what you've learned, and it's always interesting to see what people learn with that. So, all right. So, why don't we bring Michaela back, and I guess as we're kind of closing up, I mean, I really see kind of both of your projects kind of working together, which is really cool, because Michaela, I see kind of your kind of having a format on how to do something like I saw. Well, I mean, a lot of things can overlap, like smoking cessation, but you had your process on how to do that, and then Jamie can kind of really dive deeper into that teaching and that type of thing, and that's what I guess projects like this really can kind of interact. Is that And you said that you kind of did work together a little bit on all this. Did that happen, or?
Yeah, Michaela actually, in her very first year, she was one of the M1 leaders for the FMIG group that I was the president of at that time before she became the president of that group. And it was fun because she would help me with just the whole process of getting these projects together. The if actual event has to go somehow, and she was one of the people who helped them go. So,
And I will say, Jamie, that when you were mentioning over the course of the past 2 years, 40 students had been involved at some point. I was one of those 40 before my involvement ever reached any official level at Neomed. And see, look where I am now. It's because of you, Jamie. I was like, look at how cool this
full
woman
credit.
is.
There you
making these
go.
workshops,
There you go.
and here we are. So that's what I was, at my project, not reaching very many people. It was really discouraging at first. But then I thought about two things. Well, these pilot projects, when it doesn't go what you had imagined, teaches you way more usually than when it does go perfectly. And that was one of the biggest learning experience I had from this entire project. I thought going in that this would enhance my leadership skills, kind of in a vague way. I thought I'll just be a better leader. But it really kind of identified weak areas and things I really need to work on with my communication style. And Jamie, when you said, I want to get on a project and go, I think we work the same way. A lot of the times we have the resources available to us, and I'm very guilty of not using the people that want to help me. And in something like this, like you said, can't stand alone. I actually was just at Cedar Point the other day. There was a family reunion that was along this in line, and they had a shirt that says "No one stands alone." I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, sure you can. I was thinking, well, yeah, you can stand by yourself. That's the thing. And my fiance said, no, you can't. You're always using the ground. You're using something. Something's propping you up. And so you really can't go through life alone. There's always something there helping you, or there always should be, even if you don't see it. And that it kind of summed up this project for me. I had resources available. There were people helping me along, and I really needed to reach out and take advantage of that. So, I felt bad around not reaching as many students. But again, one of the students that was at the workshop is now the current FMIG president for ours. So we're just continuing the cycle. We might have not reached broad, but we have reached powerfully in our small impact so far. So anyway.
That is how it goes sometimes.
So what's next for these projects? And do you return to National Conference to present these, or what's the next step?
So I have a poster presentation for the AAFP National Conference, and it is a very large and red themed poster that has a lot of words on it. But it is in better description and deeper details than the presentation I just gave, just to kind of give an idea of what did we actually do in the workshops and how did we impact the curriculum. I didn't mention that we did get more motivational interviewing in the curriculum. What's next is Michaela also is going to help me out with those next few workshops that's coming up. So, and I'll try to help you get those workshops going too, because that sounds awesome.
Definitely. Yeah, I think our next steps for Jamie and I are to be the FMIG grandmother elders, I guess you could say, the FMIG elders kind of in the wings waiting to help as much as we can. We both really care about that group and really care about impacting people. Just one of the best memories I had of this past year was doing the fireside chat. Everyone loves the fireside chat at Neomed. If you go to Neomed, you've heard about the fireside chat. And I got to be in the seat of watching M1s who were like on the fence of family medicine, ask these questions to a family medicine physician, their eyes open. I saw it. I saw the interest like right before my eyes, and I finally understood a lot of the faculty I've worked with over the course of the year, why they do what they do. And I'm inspired by them. So I just kind of want to continue the cycle. So yeah, I have a lot of very fuzzy feelings about family medicine, and I haven't even started my rotations yet. But I guess on that note, I know with the national conferences next week, I start my OBGYN rotation on Monday, And unfortunately, I just couldn't get it in me to go to the conference this year on my first week. But hopefully I'll go next year in person for the first time when I have some time, maybe at the start of M4 year. But fortunately for me, I won't be there, but I'll be there in spirit. And maybe Jamie, you can mention that I would really love to be there too. But
Oh yeah,
Cool.
Lots of things coming up.
So Jamie, what does your next year hold in front of you there?
So I will be my final year Neomed, which is astonishing to me. I get to do a whole bunch of family medicine electives and sub internships. So I'm hoping to meet a bunch of potential residencies. So yeah, that wasn't an advertisement, but if you take it as that,
There you go. Why not?
I'm here. I'm interested in family medicine.
Well, cool. Yeah, I'm a FMIG groupie myself, and when I was a first year resident, they allowed me to be a residency advisor because I was just so I couldn't go away. They said, Mike, you have to go away, but you can still come to meetings, and I'm like, that's fine. So I definitely can see what you're seeing as far as when you're seeing those new students coming on and you introduce them to family medicine. So as we close up, maybe some closing thoughts. I'll just make this a really easy question. So why family medicine? Why is family medicine so cool? Why do you enjoy so much? Why should other students really enjoy family medicine? Michaela, go first, and Jamie can follow that.
Oh gosh, this reminds me of the question of why do you want to be a doctor? It's like so many reasons, but how do I even, I guess, come across it? Well, to me, what sums it up for me is when I figured out I wanted to be a doctor, the picture of doctor to me was a family medicine doctor. It was your doctor. And along the way, people told me, go shadow other specialties. And I was fortunate enough, my very first shadowing experience was a family medicine experience at a federally qualified health center with a DO, a PA, and an NP all working together. And that was just the best environment I've seen. And throughout that summer, I just never got the same feeling that I got at that week. And I just kind of held on to that in undergrad. And knew that at least my interest was in primary care, just with the patient dynamics. I loved the idea of having the long-term relationships with patients. I know that is like a key point for many family medicine docs, and I'm one of them. Just with my personality, I like to have a strong but small circle. And I think that kind of fits. I like to form those really strong relationships, even if they aren't of many. So that just kind of fit my personality. And basically most of my decisions in my life have been, of course, backed up by some data, I guess I would say, but ultimately it's that gut feeling that has led me a lot of big decisions. Where I went to college, deciding to run in college, where I went to medical school, kind of felt that gut feeling that this is what you need to do. And that gut feeling from family medicine has never went away. Even shadowing last summer, same thing. I looked at different specialties and I just clicked with everyone in the family medicine department. I just clicked with everyone I've met. And I love the idea of just no door is closed for me. I like the idea of being able to change up what I do, who I work with, where I go. And be more spontaneous or be more open to new opportunities. One thing I didn't mention, I'm also in the Navy Health Professions program. One of the reasons I chose the branch of the Navy was just from a very basic understanding. They're in the air and on the sea. I thought, what better options for you to take? If you don't know what you want, you can go wherever you want. So I just love the flexibility that I can provide, the patients, the people that you meet. Everywhere along the way, it's just clicked with me. It's really not much more complex than that. It just works for me.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, Very similar, actually. This is really shocking. We have a lot of things in common. I also had experiences with some FQHCs before I started medical school, and I knew that family medicine was something that was really broad and fast with, just this breadth of practice. For me, I think what really solidified it was not just my participation within my own family medicine interest group, but it was also one of the physicians said, when you figure out where you want to go, it's generally because at 3 a.m., that's the sort of call you want to hear. Who do you want to be on the other line? And for me, it was just like, well, anyone who needs that call, and who better to receive that call than someone who has that breadth of practice. So that's why family medicine is right for me. But it's very similar to what Michaela said. I like being able to say, I can practice, I can do what I'm interested in, and I have a lot of interests, and I do want to have those longitudinal relationships. So that's why family medicine for me.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you, panelists. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for sharing your projects with us. And I hope we have even more NeoMed students apply for this. And I hope I will be talking to them next year. That ends our program tonight. And hope you can join us again for Bite-Sized Learning. Other episodes of this fine program, you can go to ohioafp.org. I'm Dr. Mike Sevilla. Good night, everybody.